Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Salesforce Partner Connect. And we have Brian Hyman here on the call. How's it going, Brian?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for
Good,
having
good. No, it's great. Great to have you. Great to have partners that specialize in the ecosystem. So definitely looking forward to hear more about your background and what you do at High Meadow. So why don't we start from the beginning? How do you get in the ecosystem and how do you start your company that's very specialized in financial services and real estate of Salesforce?
Yeah, so I started out in financial services, particularly the hedge fund space, moved in-house, ran product for a large asset manager based out of Manhattan. Um, and so I was always involved in systems implementation, data integration, and migration from the start of my career. For a long time, I think as I continued to grow in my career, I noticed more and more that the partner space is typically filled with technologists, but those technologists don't necessarily have domain expertise. And so I
Right.
think that a lot of clients tend to be underserved by their partners because their partners operate mostly as order takers. They're unable to provide that sort of strategic advisory that we're able to provide at High Meadow Solutions. So that was the thought that I had throughout my career. It developed over time. And ultimately, I always knew that I wanted to start a business like this. I wanted to partner with, top-notch organizations and help them execute better and faster and more reliably and be able to do more with less. So that's how I got into this space.
I really like that, and I think you hit the nail in the head where financial service real estate is highly regulated. So you need definitely not just the technology piece, but the functional expertise as well. So what do you think are some challenges in these industries that maybe the market overlooks or doesn't really understand that it makes sense to have someone like Jaime that understands the in and outs of the industry?
It's a really broad question, but I guess what I would say is, I think a lot of the industry is focused on chasing trends without focusing on practical application and totally at the same time ignoring sort of the baggage that they're carrying along with them. So a perfect example that's topical today is AI. I think a lot of companies are focused on embedding AI within their organization. I think that a lot of boards are forcing that as a priority for a lot of these organizations. But what I've seen over and over again is a lot of our clients have technical debt that has piled up for years and years and years, whether it's because they've moved from system to system or they've lost talent. And so now their tech stack is a black box, or a lot of folks, enter into this space where they have this technical debt through a activity. So it's multiple firms coming
Yeah.
together and they're focused on consolidating wherever possible, but it's not always possible or timely or just done correctly. And so I think that lends itself to a broader issue where you're trying to bolt on helpful tools on top of a foundation that's built from sand. And so I think looking inward and really focusing on resolving technical debt and building a strong foundation from which then you can apply enhancements with targeted use cases. I think that's what we constantly preach to our clients to
Yeah.
think about the use case and the practical application first and make sure that you're building from a strong foundation.
I like that concept that I think you mentioned like the anti fat and focusing more on like long term value. And how are you able to sell these less glamorous projects? Because anyone can stand behind AI. We're gonna do an agent, we're gonna save all this money, but maybe not everyone is so on board of like a data cleanup or data harmonization project. So How do you explain the long-term value of this type of initiatives that maybe don't have the glamour of like AI or this fad that you mentioned?
I think a lot of that comes down to communication. I think sometimes when you're put in that position, you have to, speak to the value of the boring projects, the data cleanup. I think communication is key, and we tend to focus on what the business value is, what the specific outputs are. And I think that, selling that work comes down to getting the client to understand how it's going to benefit their organization while also getting them to understand the cost of doing nothing.
And in terms of when you're advising these companies and you're looking at ROI, what are some of maybe the hidden costs or things that you see companies are wasting money today with their Salesforce org? Maybe it's a product that they were sold that they don't really need it. Maybe it's something that's widely used outside of Salesforce in the industry, but in Salesforce there's better way to use it. Maybe it's MuleSoft when they can have linear integration. Like what are some things that you think companies are wasting or are not using some best practices that you recommend?
It's so dependent on the underlying client. So I wouldn't call out a specific product to be like, clients are wasting their money on this. I would say that the waste that I tend to see much more of is in the form of human hours. So I don't want to spend six figures on consolidating these two CRMs. I want to instead continue to operate as is because I don't understand that I have analysts and associates on my team that are spending hours throughout their day manually copying data into multiple different places or pulling reports out of CRM and then manipulating them in Excel to get a finished product that of course we can never get back to. So I think the waste that I see tends to be in time spent adjusting for not having the right technology, not having the right systems and the right frameworks in place. And those are typically hidden costs.
Got it. So in terms of helping modernize these businesses, many of the financial services, real estate, they come from legacy system and sometimes they are migrating into Salesforce. So that requires a lot of the data migration. But I think an important aspect is the culture, like training the people, making sure they know how to use more modern CRM. How do you make sure you bring organizations not just on the technology side, but on the culture side of the users of the CRM?
I think that that's the ages old question, right? What I've seen is the failed modes of change management are typically bringing people in and telling them this is how you operate now. This is how you need to do things today in the new world. The better approach is showing individual teams how they're benefiting from the new system implementation. What are the value adds? How are they going to save time? What do they no longer have to worry about? Or what are the entire tasks that you've rooted out of their operating model through the application of AI, of automation, of systems integration? It's kind of like that carrot on the stick approach. By showing all of these individual teams how they're benefiting, you're motivating them to widely adopt that new system.
Awesome. And in terms of what happens after the implementation, I think many times when Salesforce is selling a CRM, clients don't always understand that these systems are not static. They should be maintained. There should be like managed service, support. Things should be improved over time. It's not a set it and forget it. How do you educate customers on the value of having good managed service partner and do you think it's important? How do you partner with companies for the long term on that front?
Yeah, so I don't tend to force the issue. In fact, my approach is more to advocate for internal ownership. Right, I'm an internal guy. I didn't start my career in consulting, so I appreciate the value of an organization being able to operate independently. So, in working with my clients, my goal is not to handcuff myself to their organization and create dependency, but rather to empower them to take the work that I'm delivering and own it internally. Now, of course, there are fractional support needs, managed services needs, and things like that happen all of the time. A lot of our relationships tend to be years long relationships because of that. But I think a large contributing factor to the length of our relationships with our typical clients is the underlying nature of our business and our ability to advocate for that internal ownership and help these organizations build the muscle internally so that they can learn what we've done and how to maintain the system. They know the frameworks. Maybe they need to hire a couple roles internally, but in the long term, that's going to benefit the organization. And so, really advocating for internal ownership is the direction that we tend to.
And looking ahead, what's your take on this whole narrative? I mean, it's been around for a few months that AI is going to kill SaaS, that all these companies are going to have their grassroots built vibe code agents systems that people are going to start using very custom things for them. Like, do you believe that narrative? Do you think, especially in highly regulated industry, that's probably not gonna be the case. We've seen with like Cloudbot how many vulnerabilities they have. So what's your take on AI is going to kill SaaS?
Yeah, I mean, AI is software. So, no, I don't think AI is going to kill SaaS. I think that SaaS is going to evolve, already is evolving due to the developments in AI. I think that that trend is going to continue to accelerate, and the growth and adoption will continue to be exponential. But no, I think it's a silly narrative meant to grab attention that AI is going to kill SaaS. Don't see that as a possibility, but I do think that there is a lot of evolution to be had within the industry.
Got it. And for someone maybe that's looking to jump into the Salesforce ecosystem today, maybe thinking of starting their own company as a partner, it's a very sometimes it's very crowded space. What advice do you have for someone? Should they specialize, find like a niche where they have deep functional expertise and specialize? Should they be more generally? Like what's your advice for someone starting off today?
I love that question because it's one that I pondered myself when I started my business. I think when you're starting out, your first instinct is to operate as a generalist because you want to appeal to the masses because you're looking for a business. You want to grow and that's very, very hard. I think that the early stages of growth are the hardest stages. What I found through my experience is that operating as a generalist kind of keeps you stuck in that position where you're constantly fighting for the next thing. What we focused on at High Meadow was focusing in on one particular industry and truly becoming specialists. And I think that we are specialists in the wealth management space. I think that the competition that we've seen is, typically involved in a number of other spaces and they're not able to lend the lived experience that our team is because of our focus. So, I think that one of the things I heard the other day that was funny is that the evolutions in AI will kill specialization and now everybody should just be
A general,
generalist.
yeah.
I actually think that's completely wrong. I think the exact opposite is true. Look, AI is great and it can accelerate a lot of things. But if you have someone that's getting all of their information through ChatGPT or Claude prompts or Perplexity or whatever it is, it's not perfect information. It's not always accurate. And a generalist is never going to pick up on that. A generalist is going to write a
Mm.
prompt, get a response, read it through. Sounds good. Must be right. Not going to consider the sources at all. And I'm going to share this information. So I think more and more in today's day and age, we need specialists in every individual industry because the way that we continue to grow and evolve in any industry is by questioning the information that's presented to us. I
Yeah.
don't think a generalist is capable of doing that in a particular industry in the way that a specialist is capable of doing that. So I think that if you're just starting out, look, you have to focus on sharpening your technical skills and awareness and product knowledge. But I also think a major focus needs to be in picking your domain and acquiring the expertise relevant to that domain.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that advice. So I know we're almost on time here. If people would like to get in contact with you, get in contact with High Meadow, how can they find you? How can they get a hold of you or your company?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Brian Hyman, High Meadow Solutions. You can email us at info@highmeadowsolutions.com, or just go to our website. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. It was great having you, Brian. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.